major terror attacks in the form of a hostage crisis involving over 350 train passengers in Jafar Express.
It was a major escalation by BLA and its sponsors. These terrorists were using satellite phones. They had connections with their handlers in Afghanistan. Across the country, there is no sympathy for terrorists, be it Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or rest of Pakistan. If PTI chooses not to support this initiative, it would only hurt itself.
BLA seems to be resorting to more drastic and desperate tactics and target selection.
Both Ukraine and Russia are talking about talks to end the war, and the war is far from over.
This indicates that the negotiation is not going on only through tweets and what is being discussed on the table in Jeddah, but it also involves a very hard negotiation through arms on the battlefield at the same time. The only person who seems willing to end this war is Mr. Trump. I think Mr. Zelensky, Mr. Putin, and Western Europe are not as keen on ending the hostilities as quickly as Mr. Trump desires.
US wishes to end this war with just hopes, without a strategy. Trump tariff war against China has worked as a glue to cement more ties between Russian Federation and China.
France and Germany have emerged as two of the major powers willing to continue challenging Russian influence in Western Europe, despite a declining US security commitment towards NATO.
With a fresh episode of The Weekend, I am Murtaza Solangi.
And I am Muhammad Ali.
Over 50 days have passed since Donald Trump took office, and the promise that the Ukraine war would be over on the day one he assumes the charge of the President of the United States is still far away. The recent information that we have seen means that both Ukraine and Russia are talking about talks to end the war, and the war is far from over. The second thing is that Mr. Trump continues to surprise and shock everybody, especially in the domain of economy, and the tariff war is in full bloom. In Pakistan, 2 days back, there was a heinous terrorist act, the hijacking of a train that has ended. There was a press conference by DG ISPR and Chief Minister Balochistan today. Prime Minister has pledged that he would try to hold a national consensus, including all parties conference, but the PTI is playing different tune. So we will talk about all those issues, and let's begin by Ukraine war. How does it look like, Ali?
I think my initial assessment is that the optimism expressed by President Trump about his own ability to immediately end the Ukraine war was, I think, an overestimation of the American power. And it was also based on underestimation of the complex dynamics of European politics, as well as, I think, neglecting Moscow's own ability to be a hard bargainer in order to ensure that whatever gains it sought when it started the war are still a fair game. And according to the latest information based on open source intelligence, in the Ukrainian conflict indicates that in the last few days, Russia has successfully consolidated its gains over at least 85% of the territory that it holds. And in reaction, you've noticed that a very large-scale drone attack involving over 300 drones was also launched by Ukraine against Russia. So this indicates that the negotiation is not going on only through tweets and what is being discussed on the table in Jeddah, but it also involves a very hard negotiation through arms on the battlefield at the same time. But I think two another dimensions that it seems the Trump administration neglected and overlooked are Mr. Sarkozy's own interest to survive as a political leader within Ukrainian politics, and
You mean Zelensky?
Zelensky's own interest in surviving in the politics of Ukraine, and his crisis diplomacy spanning Middle East and Western Europe, and the ready and willing support that some of the major European powers are willing to extend to Ukraine in order to sustain its war effort. And I think France and Germany have emerged as two of the major powers willing to continue challenging Russian influence in Western Europe, despite declining US security commitment towards NATO. And another third very interesting dynamic is in the recently large conference hosted by Paris, which involved military leaders from 34 countries. Even Canada was there, and they are already discussing security cooperation between Canada and Western European countries minus the US. So in this very interesting environment, we are witnessing US continues to decline, reduce its security commitment towards Western Europe, but countries like Germany and France have understood this as an opportunity to reduce US influence in European politics and emerge and revive their own status as a major European security provider. And you know, the leadership of France has offered extended deterrence and nuclear umbrella to the Western European countries in case US, as is feared, might pull out its troops from number of countries, including Germany, as part of its NATO commitment. So these, I think, is a very interesting times in European security and political landscape. And Turkey, you know, has also used this as a very timely opportunity to offer its security role for Western Europe in return for reviving its own case to become a member of European Union. But I want your perspective on it as well.
Well, it was possible to end this war even on day one when Trump took over, had he not started the war with his allies first, and then the hot and cold against China. So United States as a global power has lost its initiative and leverage.
I think let me stop you there. You made a very profound statement that in its attempt to pressurize and challenge China and befriend Russia in order to isolate China, the first strategic mistake that the Trump administration has made is to weaken the very alliance on which it traditionally relied to pressurize and isolate China.
So now there were two powers that could have persuaded Russia to hold a ceasefire and end the war. One was US, that has been weakened by the war of attrition with its own allies and neighbors. The second force that could have persuaded Russia would have been China. But since China has been confronted by US in tariff war, so now China has no interest in persuading Russia, but standing with Russia now. So this has worked like a glue. The Trump tariff war against China has worked as a glue to cement more ties between Russian Federation and China. So if there is any country that has been emboldened in last 53, 54 days, is Russian Federation.
I think you made a very interesting analysis. I see three very interesting simultaneous trends from this newly appointed Trump administration. Mr. Trump has called for a global nuclear disarmament. That is one aspect, that he wants to be a peace snake and a peace builder and call for saving the world from nuclear arms. Secondly, he wants to end wars and conflicts in Europe and Middle East. But at the same time, he has launched an unprecedented and very aggressive tariff wars on friends, challengers, allies, and partners alike. Now, this third economic aggression by the US disincentivizes American-owned traditional allies to support the US peace efforts in Europe as well.
Well, if you watch and read the talking points of Mr. Trump, he's actually reading the same talking points of Vladimir Putin, that no NATO in Ukraine, Russian occupied territory would not be given back to Ukraine. So he has actually pleaded the case of Russian Federation on ending the war. The trouble is that Ukrainians don't want it and Europe doesn't want it. Now, in this conflict, US has lost its allies and is standing alone. So it emboldens Russian Federation. Now, had US maintained good relations with China, then they could have used China as a soft nudge to persuade Russia. But since USA has started a fierce tariff war against China, so China has more interest in standing together with Russian Federation and emboldening Russian Federation. So right now in Ukrainian conflict, if there is any group that's militarily and globally strong, that's Russian Federation. So either this war ends on the terms dictated by Vladimir Putin, or if Europe stands with Ukraine minus USA, then it would be a bloody conflict that would drag on for a couple of more years and would have more death and destruction.
And it will become a European war, the sort which we have witnessed in history, are very difficult to end. But another aspect...
It doesn't look like it's ending too soon and too peacefully.
In fact, the only person who seems willing to end this war is Mr. Trump. I think Mr. Zelensky, Mr. Putin, and Western Europe are not as keen on ending the hostilities as quickly as Mr. Trump desires. But I also want your comment on another very interesting aspect.
US is not fighting this war.
Exactly.
US wishes to end this war
yes.
with just hopes without a strategy.
Indeed. And I want you to discuss a very interesting reaction by the US neighbors and major trading partners in reaction to the US trade wars, which was based on imposing very high tariffs on the three major trading partners, Mexico, Canada, India, and European Union. And it seems that the US perhaps underestimated their ability and will to retaliate timely and in kind. What's your thought?
Well, I totally agree with you. Now the European tariffs will take effect as of April 2nd, I think. So it has created quite an unprecedented situation where the leading global power is in total isolation.
Indeed. Now, let's come to the region. I think South Asia also witnessed some major security developments last week. And let me start off by a major statement made by Pakistan's permanent representative at the United Nations Security Council special briefing on Afghanistan, in which Pakistan's permanent representative, Mr. Munir Akram, mentioned that Afghanistan is hosting at least 20 different terrorist organizations, and TTP has emerged as an umbrella organization. And it is not just Pakistan which is a target, but outfits like Daesh, Al-Qaeda, ISKP, ETIM have become a threat to most global and regional countries besides Pakistan. But we instantly, within a day or two of this statement, Pakistan witnessed one of the major terror attacks in the form of a hostage crisis involving over 350 train passengers in Jafar Express, which was taking people leaving on their holidays from Balochistan to the KPK capital, Peshawar. And so what's your thought on that?
Well, it was a major escalation by BLA and its sponsors. This has not happened before. We have seen the incidents that the buses would be stopped, there would be identity check, and people would be killed or made hostage. But this was the first time a train hijacked, and it was a 36-hour ordeal with 33 terrorists dead, and the hostages, out of hostages, probably the number is 26. Out of those, 18 were somehow related to security forces who were traveling as passenger. But on one side, it's a big news for terrorists, and it seems that they had the intel about this train. So this is a major escalation. So far, the investigation that we have heard is the communication setup. These terrorists were using satellite phones. They had connections with their handlers in Afghanistan. I would not be surprised that tomorrow the details emerge that India, Afghan Taliban, TTP, and BLA, all these elements had joint action in this sad incident. Prime Minister has announced yesterday that they would hold some kind of national conference with civil society and political parties. But sadly, one of the political parties, PTI, their leadership has made this conditional on the release, even on parole, of their convicted felon, former Prime Minister, which I don't think will be accepted. So there would be some major initiative by the government But it's about time to go back to the drawing board and make a new strategy, learning from the failures and mistakes and successes of the counterterrorism operations in Pakistan. So let's hope, let's knock on the wood that everybody would chip in to make this a success.
I think there are two aspects that I want to discuss further on this very important issue. The spokesperson of Pakistani Armed Forces, General Ahmad Sharif, mentioned in his press conference that the National Action Plan has an elaborate and extensive agenda, but only one point of that directly relates to the military's role in terms of counterterrorism. And there is an extensive list of at least 13 other items which are long overdue for adequate and timely execution and implementation. In your assessment, how important are these 13 points in the civilian and political domain? And when you mention some reluctance on the part of KPK government and PTI to join hands and extend their political support to this national security agenda, how significant is that for a total national commitment and support for a enduring and decisive gain against terrorists?
Across the country, there is no sympathy for terrorists, be it Khyber Pakhtunkhwa or rest of Pakistan. So if PTI chooses not to support this initiative, it would only hurt itself at the people's level and also at the state level when the serious actions are taken against terrorists and terrorism. When it comes to the National Action Plan agenda, either the 20 points that were agreed upon in 2014 or the 14 points in the revised agenda in 2021, most of them relate to the civilian sphere of the state apparatus. Wherever terrorism has been defeated, it has always been defeated with the help of the people. When they side with the security forces, then terrorists are defeated. So essentially, even after 9/11, if you saw, when United States started their programs, the police played the key role. So the civilian apparatus of the society, police, local committees, empowerment at the local level, and intelligence agencies, they play the main role. But at the same time, you need to take away the oxygen from terrorists. You take away the opportunities from them to recruit people. Take away that sense of victimhood that helps terrorists to recruit people. So there is a huge agenda that needs to be implemented in order to defeat terrorists. Only the kinetic security forces, they can kill the terrorists, but they cannot kill terrorism. So that's why you need a whole of the nation approach. Entire civil society needs to be mobilized, and you need to reduce the attraction in those areas for terrorists, so they would not become eyes and ears of terrorists. Rather than just on the opposite side, they should become ears and eyes of the state.
Indeed, and I think that's a very elaborate and rich analysis. My own 2 cents on this is that in terms of strategy, it is interesting that BLA seems to be resorting to more drastic and desperate tactics and target selection. If you scan its 25-year-long history, the agenda given to it, as has been accepted by Commander Kulbhushan Yadav in investigations, is that its first agenda which was given to it was to reduce Army's role and presence in Balochistan, make it unacceptable. Secondly, to reduce Chinese trust in Pakistan's ability to provide security to its people and investments. And it seems that the choice of this train as a target indicates that BLA has realized that it has failed to achieve the targets given to it in the first two domains. It has failed to weaken army or reduce its ability to remain a force, an effective force within Balochistan. It has failed to reduce Chinese trust in Pakistan. So now it is resorting to more drastic and desperate measures by attacking soft targets, which primarily and largely consist of unarmed and peaceful civilians, which essentially and eventually will undermine its own narrative and agenda that it is fighting for people's rights and freedom. Because if you have chosen to take peaceful hundreds of civilian hostage, and they are kept hungry and thirsty for almost 36 hours in Ramadan in the heat desert environment of Balochistan, then your ability to convince the Baloch people that you are doing this for their freedom and rights and development sounds like a less than convincing argument. So with these few words, thank you so much for joining us again, Murtaza. Viewers, I hope you enjoyed this show. Don't forget to give your feedback and comments, and look forward to seeing you in our next episode. Thank you.